Hey, I'm Pastor Wayne at Our Calling, and here we're talking about homelessness and COVID-19. Laurice is a staff member here at Our Calling. You've been here for how long?
I've been here about 6 months.
Awesome. As a staff member, but you were volunteering how long before then?
About 2 years before that.
It's amazing how many volunteers become staff members here.
Right.
It's like a pathway.
It's because we fall in love with it.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Now, the secret about Laurice is that you are a doctor.
Right.
What kind of doctor?
I'm a pathologist.
And so what does that mean?
In a nutshell, it means that I look at things under the microscope.
Okay. So infectious disease?
Yeah, that includes microbiology. Training is a part of my career.
Okay. Now, someday we'll talk about why you decided to leave a career as a doctor to come work with the homeless community, because you don't do anything medical here whatsoever.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, every once in a while. Yeah, it's like a mass unit.
Right.
But COVID-19,
Yeah.
there's a panic and then there's reality.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the difference between those two.
Right. I think it's reasonable to be concerned with the pandemic, of course, and the rapid spread. We're all concerned, but I think that the panic is quite a bit higher than it needs to be. So
as a mom, what do you want to do to make sure your son is healthy and doesn't get exposed?
So hand washing is very important. Something we're always trying to emphasize to our children in general, but something that's very important, particularly during the viral season, which we're in right now, and that includes the new coronavirus. So washing our hands well, not touching our faces, staying away from people who are coughing, that sort of thing. I think the recommended distance is about 6 feet so that you're not getting the respiratory droplets onto yourself. Just common sense precautions.
So when I hear CDC, and I've done a lot of conference calls and webinars with them and the county, the enemy is not as scary as the enemy you don't know, and there seems to be a lot of unknowns.
Right.
Like if I cough here on the couch, how long will the droplets of COVID-19 stay there? It was a couple of hours. Now they're saying it could be up to a week. No one seems to really know. But when you did some training with our staff, you said, hey, there's really only one way to catch the flu. And what is that?
It's from respiratory droplets, and they enter our body through our mucous membranes, which means our eyes, our nose, and our mouth. So when you have touched a surface that somebody else has gotten their germs onto, and then you touch your face, that's usually how you
So
get
you're
it.
sitting here, you like this, and you just took whatever was there and put it in your nose. And
Yes.
So don't pick your nose or touch your
Right.
eyes or pick your
Play
teeth.
with your contacts.
And don't pick anybody else's nose.
No, definitely don't do that.
And you should be okay.
Unless you have children.
Then
It's
you're
just how
gonna-
it is sometimes.
You're
Yeah.
going to be like that. You're going to lick and fix something on them. So keep your hands clean, right? That's the
Yes.
doctor's secret
That
on
is
how they
number
stay
one,
clean.
yeah.
And masks, I've heard, don't really help you stay healthy.
They're probably not as helpful as we'd like them to be in terms of protecting ourselves. They may serve as a reminder not to touch our face, or they may serve as something that's irritating that we're constantly playing with, which makes us touch our face.
So the mask then would cause us to put more stuff on our face.
Yeah, that could be a problem. I mean, they're kind of annoying when they're rubbing around and you can't breathe well. So that could be a problem. More than anything, they're probably important just for covering folks who are coughing, people who are sick, so that they're not coughing their, respiratory droplets out onto surfaces or out, across to the person they're talking to.
Sure. So our procedure here is if we have someone coughing, we're going to ask them to put on a mask. And if they refuse, we're going to ask them to leave, because they're not only endangering themselves, but they're endangering the rest of the homeless community.
Right.
And our folks are what's called, the CDC calls them double vulnerable. Why? One vulnerability is because of their age
Yes.
and comorbidity. They have multiple health challenges. They got immunity deficiency challenges. They've got emphysema or whatever.
Right.
But the second vulnerability they have is that they live in public spaces. They often are fed with unhealthy, unclean protocols.
Right.
You know, somebody will go fix a bunch of sandwiches and pass them out downtown.
Right.
Your hands have touched every bag.
Yep.
They don't have a place to put the trash. They share eating utensils. They don't have places to wash their hands.
Yes, yeah.
And so they're vulnerable because of their health condition and vulnerable because of the lifestyle or the spaces they live in. What do you think? You know, I was talking to someone recently. When someone drives down and sees a homeless person, they think, oh, that person's dirty and I might get sick from them. But really, we're more concerned of the homeless person getting sick from the person in the car.
Right.
Talk about that for a minute.
That is definitely a valid concern. The folks that tend to get the more severe illness and the folks that are dying from the COVID-19 are older folks. And those that have other diseases, like you're saying, they have COPD or diabetes or heart problems, or people that have immune problems. So, I mean, that's a lot of our homeless folks. So folks like us, we're going to be fine most likely, but we can certainly get a flu-like illness that could be COVID-19, and we hand something out the window to someone who's vulnerable to having a severe illness, and I mean, it may cost them their life.
So yeah, you've got your hands, you went to the mall, you went to the movies, you went to a Stars game, you went to a restaurant with lots of people, you just came back from a spring break trip. You could be a carrier.
Yes.
And then when you hand someone a Walmart gift card or a bottle of water or cash, or your church goes and, you know, stockpiles shoes and gives them to people or makes sandwiches, then you are exposing this vulnerable person to health issues, especially those homeless individuals that are traditionally isolated. Many of them are. They're isolated in a space, and now you've brought in a virus to them.
Exactly.
So what do you think would be a better alternative than, you know, getting someone sick by handing something out your window?
Right. I mean, I think the best alternative is to support the organizations that are already working with the homeless, rather than trying to go out on your own and potentially infecting people. I'm sure all of our organizations are working really hard to do what we can to keep our areas clean and to keep our folks safe. So helping those organizations help the homeless is probably more efficient and safer for them as well.
I remember 30 years ago, I used to think, man, these poor homeless guys on the streets, I need to go feed them, and I was giving them sandwiches. And 20 years ago, we were doing it here in Dallas and giving them food because we thought, oh, they're not going to have any food if we don't go out there. Really, there's lots of places the homeless community can eat every day. They can eat here at Our Calling. They can eat at many of our partner agencies. You don't have to have an ID. You're not required to go through a process. You can just come in and eat and leave. You know, with us, everything we do, even spiritual, faith-based, even though we're an evangelical organization, is voluntary. So, you know, we say Jesus is not the chips and salsa in order to get the meal. You can come in, not have an ID, not have anything to do with what we do, faith-based, get the meal and leave. The alternative is someone on the street getting a meal from someone that could be exposing them to danger. But it's kind of it was a backwards thought I had for years, that if I don't feed them, they'll go hungry, not recognizing that there are many alternatives to that. And so here, for example, we have to follow all the health code rules and hand washing. We're a commercial kitchen, so all of our guys are fully trained. Our kitchen is spotless. It has to be because it's inspected regularly. But Laurice, part of your job is you help manage a lot of the resources we give out, like clothes and stuff. So if someone drives down on the street and they pass out a coat out of their car or a blanket, we distribute tons of resources here, sometimes over 2,000 resources a week. Every single one of those is tied to accountability. Is there potential of getting sick from a coat that someone, or a $5 bill or a bottle of water or a beanie or a blanket out of a car window? Does that also have the potential of passing a virus?
I'm not sure that we know. I think if you're directly passing something, an object, you know, clothing object or something like that through your window, and you're sick, there's probably a higher potential there. In terms of clothing items that have been donated and folded and put away in a bin and have sat there for a few days or a few weeks before it was given out, it's probably less likely.
Yeah.
I don't think we know for sure how long the virus lives on surfaces, but they tend, just in general, the coronavirus family of viruses doesn't live that long on surfaces. So it's probably less of a risk, but it's the directly handing stuff off to people if you have the illness and you don't know it.
And so you're driving in your car and you wipe your nose or you sneeze, and then you hand someone a blanket or a $5 bill, you could potentially be exposing them. So as a doctor and as a mom, keeping people healthy, especially your family, is very important. If you had any advice to give somebody that is going to interact with anyone in the public, would it be different than advice for interacting with a homeless person from a health perspective?
I don't think so, other than just when you're interacting with people in general, we want to be aware of the vulnerability of the people that we're interacting with. So for me, I'm less worried about getting my family sick and more worried about, my in-laws who are older. They're healthy, but they're older. So just being aware of that, I think, is important. We don't want to get vulnerable people sick.
Well, I know many of the nursing homes in the country are starting to limit visitors.
Yes.
It's because they don't want your visitor carrying a disease into a vulnerable population.
Yes, and then you've got a closed space where you've got a lot of vulnerable people together. So that's a recipe for disaster.
I know, like, the jails are not letting people come visit the jails because it's an isolated space. You have all these people in the jail. So my wife won't be able to come visit me when I get locked up, right? So we've got to keep vulnerable people safe. We've got to keep them protected. But in order to protect ourselves, number one thing is washing hands.
Yes.
Now, talk about washing hands just for a minute.
Yes.
You were saying going in there and doing this is not good.
Yeah, you need to wash your hands properly. So I think the biggest issue with hand washing is that we don't wash long enough. You want to get your hands wet. You want to get soap, but you need to wash at least 20 seconds. And that doesn't sound like a very long time, but if you actually watch the clock, not wash it, watch the clock, it's a lot longer than you'd think. So I think the traditional advice is to sing Happy Birthday twice, the Happy Birthday song. Or
Happy
any
Birthday
song
twice. This morning I was timing to give an alternative because somebody said, I'm sick and tired of hearing that song in my head. The birthday song, right? Every time I wash my hands. I said, well, sing Jesus Loves Me, right?
Right.
The verse and the chorus actually
time a song and pick it.
Yeah, there you go. There's also some verses in the Beastie Boys' License to Ill album that I think would be really good too.
Oh, perfect. I've got that one.
Yeah, probably not. Most people don't have those lyrics memorized from high school like I do. So 20 seconds, washing your hands. Same thing with hand sanitizer.
Yes.
Don't just do this.
Right.
But every surface.
Yes, you want to make sure that you're rubbing vigorously all the surfaces of your hands, and we tend to forget the back of our hands, the sides of our hands, and between our fingers, our fingertips. So you want to really be rubbing all of those surfaces well. And with the hand sanitizer, you're rubbing until it dries, not smearing it around and waving your hands in the wind. You want to keep rubbing until it's pretty much dry.
Now, I watched an episode of Mythbusters because I'm a nerd, and about drying your hands, and they did a test on which is more hygienically, which removes more germs, the blow dryers or the paper.
Ooh. And what did they find?
And it was the paper. The paper towels actually removed more germs because people, when they're getting blow drying, they don't stay there long enough.
Oh,
and so they traditionally still have lots of stuff on their hands, and they're doing this and then wiping on their pants.
Right.
And it's not as dry.
And they may not have washed properly to begin with.
Yeah.
So
dry off your hands with a paper and then use the paper to open the door.
Yes. Use the paper to turn off the faucet. Use the paper to open the door, and then, toss it into the garbage can.
So one of the grossest things that we own are our cell phones.
I can only imagine.
Because we touch everything, and then we touch our phone, and then we hold it up against our face. We wash our hands, and then we grab our nasty phone and do this. Apple just put out a press release that you can sanitize your phone with, some kind of wipe, and it's fine.
Yeah, you can wipe it, and it's fine.
Destroy it. But for homeless friends, we've been instructing them. We have hand washing spaces here. We have signs up in the bathrooms now about how to wash your hands properly. We put, the hand sanitizer things when we can find hand sanitizer all over the building. But beyond that, and keeping some social space between people, any other recommendations specific to COVID-19?
Just again, remembering not to touch your face, right? The distance, the hand washing, the alcohol. That's about all I can think of off the top of my head.
I talked to the CDC and the county, and we talked to the head of medical for Dallas Fire Rescue and City Hall Office of Emergency Management. All these folks, they're saying it's the same protocol for the flu. Yes,
it is. Yeah, it's how you're going to prevent the spread of any virus. That would, whether it's the cold, the flu, or the new coronavirus, the same procedures.
So I'm going to ask a really weird question because I had a homeless friend ask me this question.
Okay.
Right? So AIDS is spread through sex. Can you get COVID through sex? Does anybody know if you can get the flu through sex?
Not that I know of. Just because they're respiratory viruses, they infect your upper respiratory tract.
Okay.
And with the COVID-19, it actually can infect your lungs, which is the big problem, which is a lower respiratory issue. But I don't know that it really becomes a bloodborne illness. And that's kind of what makes these other viruses different, like hepatitis and HIV, is that they circulate in your blood and infect your whole body, or, with hepatitis, your liver. So I doubt that you'd be able to get these viruses that way.
But it's probably still a lot of nobody knows.
With COVID, there's a lot of nobody knows. That's correct.
Because it first showed up in the end of 2019. That's why it's called COVID-19. And it's all brand new. If you look at when it started and now how many people have it, it's just this huge spike.
Yes.
And now it's popping up all over every state in the country. And unfortunately, vulnerable people are going to get really, really sick.
Yes.
So to protect your family, you're doing the same thing that we're going to do when we're serving the homeless community.
Exactly.
Do you think being a doctor gives you a different perspective on health or caring for homeless friends?
I think maybe I'm just less likely to panic about it and just kind of wait and see what happens.
You're not running out and emptying the grocery store for toilet paper?
No, I have not stocked up on paper products. So just not panicking about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not a high-risk individual either, so I think that's maybe a little bit easier for me to say than if I were in a different situation.
Okay.